Hey there! So another year means another Loy Krathong or Peng festival, and I wanted to share my experience and some information that I found to help you plan your trip. So the thing that first prompted our Thailand trip was this lantern festival. I'd seen pictures of it, it looked so magical, and it was a major thing on my bucket list. The thing about the festival is that it's not a set date, so to speak. It falls on a lunar calendar, which changes from year to year. So it can be tricky to plan super far in advance. I researched article after article after article, and I even asked a friend of mine who's Thai, and no one seemed to know the exact dates for the Lantern Festival last year. Also, there's a little bit of confusion in terms of there's Loy Krathong, which is referring to the actual floats that go on the river, and then there's also Yi Peng, which is a festival that refers to the actual lanterns. But I noticed a lot of vlogs and articles that I read seem to confuse the two or use them interchangeably. But Yi Peng is supposed to be the actual lantern festival. So we got there and we all put our way through the enormous parade. If you're not much on crowds, it can be a bit overwhelming. I'd say I do pretty well on crowds, and I was even feeling a little overstimulated. But we sort of got near the front, and we were able to admire the elaborate floats going by. The people dressed in, amazing traditional clothes. And there was this song being blasted that I ended up humming for a few days after. It's pretty catchy. Then we got our first peek at the lanterns. There are several ways you can partake in the Lantern Fest. There's the mass release, which I'd definitely like to go back and do someday, as it seems a bit more organized and more grand scale with the release being all together. But it also costs around $100, I read. So we opted to go to Peng River near Nawarat Bridge and huddled with all the other tourists setting them off. This was actually a recommendation from a woman restaurant owner that we had kalsoya before. But yeah, you simply walk through the crowds and there will be people selling lanterns all over the place. We didn't think about this, but we bought a pretty big one, and we were pretty clueless how to actually set it up. So we asked some other tourists nearby, and they suggested having one from their group help us set it up, as it's pretty difficult to do with just two people. They ended up filming us, lending us their lighter, and just being super awesome. Ours was a miracle, and on the first go cleared the string of lights by inches. That I definitely recommend buying a backup and not just banking on one go. They're pretty cheap, running around a couple dollars. While it definitely was magical seeing all the lanterns floating in the sky together, what was happening beneath the sky was definitely a bit chaotic. Setting off a lantern into the sky is not as easy as it looks. Some lanterns have abnormalities in the shape. Some might get a small tear when setting up. Sometimes the wind just picks it up in a weird way. There are people who had lanterns catch on fire and then just burn in a heap at their feet. Some whose lanterns flew too low and nearly grazed someone's hair. some lanterns got caught on stringed lights or in trees. Somehow they just burn up though and never catch anything on fire, so I suppose that's magical in its own right. And some still very anticlimactically floated low and then landed in the river. All in all, it was a super memorable experience, one that I definitely want to go back and try again. If you're planning a trip to Thailand and you're wanting to see the Lantern Festival, I really hope this helps. I spent weeks researching and planning for that trip and centering it around that. I was really anxious that we'd buy the tickets, we'd get there, and then oops, it happened last weekend. So yeah, it all worked out in the end, but I would definitely recommend, if at all possible, to do the actual official release at Maejo University. I hear they have two separate events, the one for locals and then the one for tourists. With the money and the time it took to actually get there, it's about 45 minutes outside of Chiang Mai, and sort of, just arriving in a country where we didn't exactly have a grasp on how things worked. We were a little hesitant, and we thought that we could get sort of the same feel doing the event at the river. But I think it is really important to make sure that the festival is tied to its actual cultural roots. With the actual official release, there's the meditation and prayer that happens beforehand. Also, experience-wise, it's supposed to be a lot more organized so that everybody does the lanterns at the same time. At the river, like I described before, it gets a little hectic, and it's mostly tourists. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below, and I'll do my best to answer them from what I know and what I've learned. I also added some links in the description box below with some sources I found helpful planning my trip. But until next time, I'll see you in my next vlog.